Next, please welcome Bill Oliva, Chief of Structures Development at the Wisconsin DOT, and also the Midwest Bridge Preservation Chair.
Good morning, and I do want to thank Bashak for the research. And from the 9 scenarios that she ran from us, I do have to say that that has been incorporated into our asset management process and programming. $2 billion 6-year program related to bridges, so thank you. And so today what I want to do is give an update on our pooled fund study that was developed in our Midwest Bridge Preservation Partnership. Jonathan Groeger of Wood Environmental was going to be here. He's the principal investigator, but he was unable to travel to the meeting. So I'll give you the update. What we want to do is talk about the objectives of the study, the participants, the work plan, and some of the very preliminary results. And I'm going to show you some of the results, but I don't want you to take any notes on them because they're very preliminary. They're about to be regenerated. Kind of the big picture, and I'm going to stand back from the presentation and say, this is really one of the powerful aspects of these preservation partnerships, because what we did here was unprecedented, in my opinion, is that we took the practitioners, you all, who identified a need, and we worked together to shape that into a research statement, and then used another mechanism to fund and implement the research. So it really is a testament to the power of all of you and the things that we can do. But with regards to this project, we determined it's necessary for DOTs to have insights to deterioration, to be able to anticipate the future conditions of our inventory, so we can program projects, not just understand what's needed right now, but what are we facing 2 years from now, 4 years, or 10 years from now? So that's the importance here. So we wanted to develop deterioration curves and relationships to help us plan and prioritize and budget for this work actions coming into the future. So what we did from the 2017 Midwest meeting in Minnesota, was the start of this concept. We decided that we wanted to get together and do something on this. So 12 of the 14 Midwest states decided to get together, pool their resources and data, and that's the historic design, construction, operation practices, maintenance activities, element, defect, NBI, and related inspection data together. And really, the things that we pulled together, the most challenging was the data end of it. Certainly the money and time is important, but the data was very challenging because we all did things a little bit differently amongst ourselves. But the overall objective was to develop deterioration curves that focus on specific key transition points in the life cycle. So when is an overlay needed? At what point is it no longer effective? At what point in the life cycle should we be putting it on there? And we wanted this effort to identify and create results to improve the accuracy in our bridge management systems. So, we've all been integrating to some extent asset management and bridge management together going forward, and we're using different platforms. In Wisconsin, we've built our own. Many of the states are working with the AASHTO BRM. There are agile assets out there, and other homegrown. And what we recognized is the results of this research really needed to serve many states and the many different platforms that they use. So we really wanted the results in that type of a format that could be used by everyone. With regards to the project, Wisconsin is the sponsoring state. Myself, as the project manager, and Fau Jabber of Nebraska, actually was the guy who really thought this would be a good idea also. So I want to give him some credit as we go forward. It originally was set out to be a 2-year project, but we've recently amended it to give it another year. The original contract was $400,000, and again, Wisconsin's the lead agency. And I want to give a lot of credit to Wood Environmental Infrastructure and Jonathan Groeger as the principal investigator. Paul Thompson has been very involved with the analytics, and then also Dr. Betkus has been part of the research team too. And I want to give this research team a lot of credit, because what we're out to do is unprecedented. It requires tremendous effort, insight, and interaction with each of the states. And the whole way through this, they've been patient and supportive and resourceful in working with us. So that has been outstanding. I also want to give special credit to the Research Technical Advisory Committee, and their names are up here. And all of these people have a day job. And we've been meeting monthly and bi-monthly for over a year as we work through each state's data to align their agency defined elements their inspection information, their preservation acts, and all that in a manner that we can use it as a common database. So all of these people have gone way beyond in helping to support this project and get very valuable data that provide excellent results. So thank you to this TAC as well. Here's kind of a big picture of how we're going through this project, and I'll try to make some of this short. You know, we've done literature reviews, we've collected data, you know, we've got data management plans, and a lot of stuff like that, and there are various tiers of analysis that we're going through. You know, tier 1, you know, are deterioration rates on reinforced concrete deck, on reinforced concrete slabs. You know, we get into tier 2, we're going to be looking at the wearing surfaces, agency-defined elements, and best practices in tier 3. So there's a lot of things going on here as we go through this. There have been a lot of products developed to date as far as the literature review. You know, we looked at all the 12 participating DOTs, you know, and the research that's gone on in their states to support where they're at and their best practices and things like that. So all of that's been documented and rolled into what we're doing. There's been data gathering memos. This is a very complex process. How do you do this? So as we go through this, we're mapping what we do, because my suspicion is we may want to do it again in the Midwest, but some of your states and your regions may want to utilize this process to develop deterioration relationships that are more consistent with your environments. We've got data screening memos and a data management plan also. At some point, we're going to host this data for future updates and regeneration of these curves as more of that element information becomes available. 12 states, we're using a MySQL analysis to go in there to work with the database. So for our tier 1 analysis, we're going after reinforced concrete decks. We're going after reinforced concrete slabs, and also NBI for the components. We're looking for curves related to reinforced concrete decks after major preservation actions, and a few other things. So the procedure, so we've gone through this. So it took us a while to collect this data. And we worked with Federal Highways to get information directly from them that we submit on an annual basis as individual states. So we've incorporated that in. But working with the states, we wanted information about, you know, their agency-defined elements, work actions, and preservation treatments in the past to align, you know, with the inspection. You know, looking at their inspection records that's submitted, you know, there's, you know, biannual or every 2-year inspections. There are special inspections, damage inspections. So we had to sift out some of the stuff that wasn't relevant to the deterioration analysis. So that took a while to go through there, and you know, we're talking about millions of records that were pulled together and aligned by Wood Environmental. And then, you know, we went through, I'm not going to go there yet. We went through there, and once we were sure we believe we understand how this data should align itself, they went through and they did that first round of analysis on deterioration rates. And we're looking for time and state, you know, for the elements, and also general for the NBI-related deterioration. We made a pass through that, and the whole way through we were kind of mapping our process. It's like, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we want to do different here? And then we asked each of these states to take a look at the data set as Wood understood it to be correct. And also some things as far as major preservation actions. What constitutes a major preservation action? Some of the states had tremendous records on what information was available, but it might have extended outside of what we consider as a major preservation action. So we had to roll that back a little bit, but then align it with the other states so there'd be some level of consistency. So we've been working on that quite intensively for over a year, or close to a year. And what I'm about to show you here are results of the pre-alignment. So all of these graphs that I'm about to show you are about to change. And some of them might not make a lot of sense. But what is most important in this is that we do have a process that can yield these deterioration relationships, time and states, or curves, and they are about to be regenerated with a much improved data set as a result of the efforts of the DOTs and the principal investigator. So here we have some deterioration relationships for reinforced concrete decks, and it shows a recommended and some comparisons to others. I think we've got Alabama in there also, but this is kind of showing you the nature of the information we're starting to get out of this. So this is really good stuff. And, we've got time and state for transitions here and comparisons. I think we were comparing with also a Nebraska study in here. But overall, I'm not asking you to take a look at, do you agree with the curves or not? But it's really the nature of the information we're getting out of this, because, I believe it will be in between January and March, we're going to get a new generation of these curves that are going to be much improved. I won't say fabulous yet. But, the big thing I want to impress upon you is the nature of what we're doing and the type of information that we're getting out of this and how we're going to use this information going forward. Additional information's on, the deck components, transition state or time and transition, things of that nature. I think this is where we compared to Nebraska. There were some early recommendations based on the first iteration. But this is really turning out great, and we've spent a tremendous amount of time in the past month working individually with the research team and each of the states looking at the wearing surfaces, and making sure that we could align the agency-defined elements associated with wearing surfaces so that when we regenerate these curves, it makes a little bit more sense. So we're, again, looking at a whole bunch of different stuff. So we talk about element level deterioration. We are also looking at the components also of superstructure, substructure, and culvert in this process as well. These results came out last summer. I was really impressed, like, wow, the mechanism works. I was very happy about that. But as the states looked at it, they said, well, this could be a little bit different. Why isn't this consistent with our expectations? That's when we started doing the deep dives into the data, individually, and I anticipate a really good set being generated shortly. To illustrate some of the different curves that we're getting, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on those, and here are some of the wearing surface relationships on the first run through. So this is generalized for all wearing surfaces, I believe, but what we will have when the dust settles for this are deterioration relationships for the different types of wearing surfaces. Thin polymer overlay, asphalt overlay, PPC, whatever each of the individual states are using, that we have a significant data set. So some of the states may be using one treatment and others not. We will be able to isolate and run relationships for the states that are using that treatment. And that is unprecedented from my past experiences. So path forward. So we're holding meetings. So we were meeting more frequently than monthly for a while. We're continuing to meet. We're through the data screening process. So we've kind of closed the door for now on adjustments to the data set. The researchers are going to clean up the data set based off of the comments from the states. We'll have a peek at that here at sometime in the next few weeks, but then the researchers will go through and regenerate the next generation of these curves based off of a greatly improved data set. All the states are up to speed on the tools and the mechanism to do this work. The Tier 2 curves will shortly follow the regeneration of the Tier 1. So we're going to be looking again at wearing surfaces, curves for the joints. Defects are also in there, so progression of defects will be included. Paint systems are very important, so we're going to isolate those. Steel, structural elements in harsh environments. Task 8, there's going to be documentation of the agency-defined elements, determination on NDE and translations, and guidance on best practices and things like that. So the researchers had this opportunity to work with each of our 12 DOTs and see what we're doing with agency-defined elements. I think part of the results of this project may be some recommendations from the researcher, like you may want to better align yourselves in this way as far as the types of agency-defined elements that you're using, and maybe some recommendations on how we're collecting and storing data. Just from their perspective, what they've learned, they will share with us in all of that. And then we'll have a final report near the end of the year, about a year from now, should be the final report for this project. But we should be getting results of interest here shortly in the spring, and we're really excited about that. I know in Wisconsin, I had alluded to earlier, we're programming a $2 billion 6-year program for structures as part of our overall structure or transportation program, we're making a lot of commitments, based off of our ability to anticipate and deteriorate our current inventory. We believe that this information will have a very big impact on the ability of our state to accurately make these commitments to projects in the future. And we believe it will benefit the Midwest states also. But for the other states that might be here today, this information will potentially provide some benefit to you all. And the process that we've gone through, if your area, region, state is interested in doing this, I think we've got a roadmap now that will provide great benefit and utility to you all if you choose to go down this path. So the outputs I think I talked about, we'll have various deterioration curves and some training tools and things like that to implement these in the various DOTs. So we talked about the revised timeline. So we should have the Tier 1 curves by March, Tier 2 sometime this summer, and will be completed in the late fall, about a year out. So with that, are there any questions about this project?
Really great presentation. Thanks for sharing with everybody. Quick question. It looked like on the graphs that you all are using a health index to show those graphs. Could you define maybe how that health index was defined?
Good question. No, it has a number of factors in it, and I think it's just a general relationship that considers a number of factors. Maybe Basak may want to comment on that?
BRM default health index, but that's, although it was in the graphs, that's not a major focus actually in the analysis. Mostly it's the GCR and the element deterioration models.
From my perspective, the most important outputs from this are going to be those transition times, or time and states. So, but you can combine and depict the outputs and results of this in a number of manners.
Bill, thank you for the presentation. Siva from Siva Corrosion. Quick question for you. When you talked about NDE translations for this model, can you tell me a little bit about that and how this is being thought of and what data being used and translated into the model, NDE?
For non-destructive evaluation?
Correct.
How that played in was an information to support the coding of the inspection and conditions. Commentary from Basak?
Actually, that's kind of the final task in the project. So far, we haven't really got into it yet, but it's going to be another process where we sit down with the states, look at what they are doing, and do some analytics to kind of build those relationships. So it's kind of in the to-do list. So nothing I can say definite.
Oh, I understand what you're asking. Yeah, so as part of the best practices, so the project will document what some of the inspection practices of the DOTs and the best practices that they're using to either do the coding or make inspection information. So there's a lot of areas where the researcher has the perspective to see what each of us are doing and make recommendations, not just to make us more consistent, but who's doing something great or interesting or beneficial. And that's one of the areas that they will comment.
Is there any way we could interact as it develops or as it's being thought of, or at least be aware of?
Just these updates. The research team, I guess at their prerogative, may reach out to industry to ask questions about NDE, if that's what you're requesting. But I have no specific idea of how the states would raise that question. At this point, we are telling them what we're doing and what we use to create the inspection data. Whether it was thermography or chloride testing or whatever led us to code our inspection data. We're making sure the researchers know and have that ability to incorporate and consider that in the analysis process, but there's not really an avenue that I can see where we would solicit industry about NDE in general.
At this stage, it's not really building a methodology or developing protocols, but rather trying to capture the agent's practice as it is to capture to this data set.
Thank you all.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.